Story number 1, Something in the Woods. I guess I'll start with a background. I'm a 33-year-old female, but this story takes place when I was a teenager, living in a suburb of Chicago. The village I lived in was quiet and middle class. We lived like a mile from the police station, and the worst crimes we had were a murder or two, and more boring. And unless you had a car, you were stuck just walking around the park at night with your friends, which is kind of boring. Anyway, one night, my girlfriend and I decided to go hang out at a park with some guys at like 12 a.m. The night was a bit windy and had a full moon. I even got a kiss that night from the boy I liked. But the night wasn't just fun and hanging out late. There's a deep forest in the park with a stream and a playground right next to it. The same playground we went to, with swings and jungle gym columns. There's 2 bridges, one made of wood, the one everyone uses, and one made of rocks. That's rarely used because it is deeper in the forest. Over the stream, connecting the 2 halves of the forest/park area. I'll get to the rock bridge in a minute. We hung around on the swings and chatted and just spent the evening together. And I'm sitting there, frozen. I think I'm seeing things. It just kind of lays there on the ground but doesn't move. A flash of fear grips me. What if it comes this way? I look to my friends and no one notices anything. I look back and it's gone. Did it go back or go somewhere? I really want to get out of there. Then one friend asks, "Did you guys hear about the urban legend of the rock bridge over the stream? Apparently some kids or something played on the bridge and fell over and died." What a thing to say after what I saw, but I didn't ask anyone anything and just pretended I didn't see anything. But the experience stuck with me. I never talked about it because it must have been my imagination. Things like that happen only in scary movies, right? But I rarely went to that park after that. And Black Thing, if you are real, I hope we never meet again. Who knows what would have happened if you saw me the same time I saw you? Story number 2. Can a mirror lie? I devoted nearly a month trying to cast a curse on someone I wasn't particularly fond of. It succeeded. But that same night, I saw a man. He was dressed in a pitch-black trench coat and plague doctor's mask. He was only visible because of a slight glow coming from my charging phone. He didn't say a word, just stood and stared. I tried to ignore him by going to sleep, but the feeling of being watched became stronger. I woke to see him nearly a foot away from my face, breathing heavily. He then stood up and walked through the wall he was facing. That was my only encounter with him, until about a month later. I was looking in the mirror after taking a shower. I saw him standing behind me. This time he spoke. "How do you continue?" I didn't think about answering the question until he demanded I do so. He angrily yelled, "Answer." My only response was that I didn't know. I waited to see if he wanted anything else from me. He said nothing. I turned to leave and he was gone. I checked the mirror again and he wasn't there either. Since then, I've perpetually felt like I was being watched. I've seen him on street corners, other seats in school and restaurants, and in the mirror as well. He continues to speak to me, but I never respond. For those getting interested in spell casting, I would strongly advise against it. Story number 3. This house is possessed. I have always been quite adventurous, so it stands to reason that when I had spare time alone, I would hop in my car and go exploring. I especially liked finding old abandoned homes, and there are a lot of them in Colorado. My husband hated the fact that I would do this completely alone, and he was always afraid that I would get into trouble. When I saw a no trespassing sign, it was an invitation, so it's no surprise that I would often be where I wasn't supposed to be. One day, While out driving down old country roads, I happened upon an old abandoned farmhouse, so I pulled into the driveway. There was no garage or carport, so my car was right on the site. This old red brick farmhouse was all boarded up, but around the side of the house there was an opening where one of the boards had fallen off, so I scrambled on up and crawled through. I found myself in a front bedroom. Of course, it was rather dark, but there were cracks in the boards that let in just enough light that you could easily maneuver throughout the house without too much difficulty. Imagine my surprise to find everything still in the house, untouched. Near as I could tell, it had been empty since sometime in the 60s, so it had been sitting in this condition for at least 20 years. I found this very strange that no kids had gotten inside to party, nor any evidence of a homeless person, especially since this house could be easily seen from I-25, a major highway that goes through the heart of Denver, and there was an exit within walking distance to this house. Denver had a very large homeless population, just like all big cities have. The living room had all the furniture, lamps, and tables, and the bedrooms all had armor and iron beds. Everything left in the kitchen, along with canned goods, spices, and dishes, was still there. In the bedroom where I entered, there was a portable toilet, and I wondered if someone had been sick. I got a feeling that was the case. I spent hours in there just looking through pictures and postcards of the family that had lived there. There was a ton of Catholic paraphernalia too, crucifixes on the walls, rosary beads, and the like. It was frustrating to me, and I was trying to figure out why this family had left the house this way. And I was so surprised when I came out how many hours had passed, but I chalked it up to being too involved in losing track of time. I've never worn a watch, so it wasn't hard to believe that this could happen. This place also wasn't too far from my house, so I would go there as often as I could and wander the grounds, investigating the sheds and the outhouse. The root cellar under the house was loaded with old canned goods and rotted root vegetables. The smell, of course, after all this time, was non-existent, so really it wasn't unpleasant. I kept wondering what had happened there. I did not know that the family that owned this home lived just around the corner on this same street. How I found out was that they caught me there and ran me off. I watched them as they left and saw where they went. Now when I would go back, I'd look to see if they were home before I'd go in. So, week after week, month after month, I would go back. There was so much to explore. Time after time, they would catch me there, again and again, and always run me off. I always wondered why they never called the police on me, but they never did. I think they knew I was being haunted, although I was not aware of this at the time. Later on, after I had been exploring for a number of months, I began to find myself there with no recollection as to how or when I had gotten there. But every time I went in, hours and hours would go by, and every time I came out, I was always surprised at how much time had passed. I would think I was in there about 2 hours, but would find at least 6 hours had passed, and it was dusk. It would begin to get dark, and I would have to leave because, of course, there was no electricity. I was completely taken over and got it into my mind that I wanted to buy this house, so I talked to my husband about it, never revealing to him that I had been going there. I kept it a secret from everyone, even my best friend. I did some research and tried to find out anything I could about it. I did find out it was built in 1910, but could get no other information about it. I even tried to talk to the people that owned the house, but they would never tell me anything at all and would just tell me to leave again. I never damaged anything and left everything as it was. I never took anything from that house until one day I was drawn to an old green woven clothes hamper in very good condition. And since I needed one at home, I took it. No one would miss it, right? Now that I had made a connection, bad move. Soon after I took this hamper, I had a dream. Or was it a dream? A figure in a dark hooded cloak approached me and said, "Can I come into you and finish living out the rest of my life?" I replied, "If I do, then when do I have to live out the rest of my life?" And the figure disappeared, and I woke up. Creepy, huh? I do believe that the hamper was the catalyst for this event. I should not have taken anything. Thou shalt not steal. There's always a reason for his commandments. The next time I went to the house, it had been completely demolished. The house and all of the outbuildings were gone. There was absolutely no trace that anything was ever there. Not a brick, not a board, not even the foundation. The root cellar had been filled in completely. I was devastated and wondered how and why they did this. The house was safe and could have been sold. I had been going there 2 and 3 times a week, so I don't know how this was accomplished so quickly. I wonder if the dream came after the destruction, but I had not known what they had done, and the hamper made it possible for this spirit to come to me. I kept that hamper for a number of years and was always haunted by whatever had happened there. As long as I held on to it, I could not release myself from the spirit that inhabited that house, although I never had any more dreams. I finally did rid myself of it, though, because I knew as long as I hung on to it, I'd never be free. I do not remember how I disposed of it, but it wasn't until then that I was finally released. But this had gone on for years. I'm very much more careful now when and where I go, and will stand outside and take the time to size up the spirit or spirits connected to these old places before entering. Please, if you are out exploring and you find a place like this, do not take anything, as you don't know what you are bringing home. And if you have taken anything from a house like this, get rid of it now.